You're now listening to Durian ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing.
Monday Morning Matters.
Perspectives from Southeast Asia.
Hi, this is Arlene and welcome to Durian ASEAN. Today we are having an interesting discussion in relation with the COP21 in Paris that happened earlier this month, and also we will be discussing on ASEAN whether it's ready for a climate change policy. With me is of course Anbu, a senior economist from ERIA in Indonesia. First of all, I want to say hi. Hi Anbu.
Hi, thank you, Arlene, and it is nice to be here this afternoon.
And I think the first thing is, could you introduce yourself and what do you do?
Yes, and I am a senior economist at ERIA, that is the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. And at ERIA, I do more basically analyzing the policies and the practices at the pan-ASEAN level on the climate, energy, and the other environmental issues. We do conduct several studies, and we do report these our findings to the ASEAN Economic and the Energy Ministers meeting.
So with your role as a senior economist in ERIA, what is your current focus right now when it comes to climate change?
Yeah, and the climate change, basically, here I am handling the two major projects, or we can say it is three major studies on climate change. One is about the mitigation. Climate change mitigation. Here what we do is basically we are doing some kind of meta policy analysis focusing on the low carbon energy systems, how these energy systems and the climate policies and the trade policies, particularly from the perspective of Asian economic community, how these three policy regimes are converging. That is one we are focusing on, the climate change mitigation. On the climate change adaptation, our focus is more on this global value chain. How resilient these value chain are to climate change, particularly how vulnerable they are, and how we can increase that resilience capacity.
And this is specifically in Southeast Asia that you are looking at the value chain?
Yes, that is in the Southeast Asia. That is linked to this global chain. Third project is a kind of co-benefit, that is particularly the circular economy and the public-private partnerships. Here that is how this resource recycling can be promoted in ASEAN, and what are these economic benefits, particularly, for example, conversion of this waste into energy form or waste into material form, how it will bring that added economic value and also social benefits. And here our focus is more on the public-private partnerships, how the business community and the policy-making community can come together and to introduce some of these new PPP models.
Interesting.
So these are the major three areas that is I am working, and I am in charge of these projects.
We will explore further on the private sector in terms of trying to reduce carbon emission. But let's talk about this the COP21 in Paris. Based on your own personal view, do you think it was a success?
Yes, I was there in Paris. Actually, I was there for 5 days, and we conducted the special events. I was part of it, and I also supported some of the countries, particularly the least developed countries. For as a whole, I think for many stakeholders, this new climate regime or the Paris deal marks a very concrete turning point, both for the tackling the climate change as well as the accelerating this low carbon economy. So I think for me it is a successful successful in the sense that is now all the countries are agreed to achieve this 2 degree or more than 2 degree, that is 1.5 degree targets. And also they also combined this whole framework also intact in the sense that is it supported the CBDR, common but differentiated responsibilities. Here there is IND, so this is acceptance of this intended nationally contributed emission reduction aspects. That is the one innovative aspect where there is the developed countries also accepted the responsibilities. And third success will come in this financing. I think the 100 billion and most of them will be coming from these developed countries.
And they are ready to sponsor the developing countries from the developed countries.
Yes, and that is they did it actually. That is even in the Durban and the Copenhagen, but the money is not flowing. Only they conducted they pledged 100 billion, but it's only 11 is coming up. And so, but with this INDCs and with this common set of the goals, I think now we are more optimistic, and this funding will be coming in.
And for ASEAN, how does the COP21 influence the climate change policy in this region?
It is premature to say that it is already influenced, but there are enabling conditions. Now for COP21 and all the countries, particularly Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, and they have submitted their own INDCs, intended and nationally determined contributions. For example, in the case of Indonesia, they committed about 29% reduction in 2030 when compared to 2010. That means it shows a kind of determination. So that means once it has been committed and it will be reviewed after 5 years, that means they need to take actions from now. What type of actions they are taking, and at what speed they are going to do it, and how it is going to be funded, and these are the questions that remain to be answered. I think now they just came back from Paris. I think probably now they will be discussing seriously and how they will look into it and where they will be looking into it.
Do you think ASEAN is committed to address the issue of climate change? Are they ready for it, in fact?
Yes, ready and commitment. The commitment comes with whether it is egg or chicken, and see, because they are mentally prepared and they are, and it is not. These are the pledges that is made in the international community. That means when they are releasing their INDC means they are very serious about it. But the more important point is how they can do it and what is the cost. And still actually there is a cost estimation. It has been not done very much in detail.
I see.
So and where that most of the actions are coming from. So these are the minute details it has to be done. I think I had seen this INDC framework of Vietnam and Indonesia and also Malaysia, and I think these are more or less same as what they pledged in the Copenhagen, with some more additions. So my point of thing is now ASEAN has prepared, not as a region as a whole, but as the individual constituent countries. But how speed we are going to it and where the reactions will be focused, I think still we need to time.
So there's a big question mark there. Anyway, we'll take a short break. When we return, we'll discuss further on the climate change situation in Southeast Asia.
Monday Morning Matters
Perspectives
from Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene. Welcome back to Durian ASEAN, where we discuss critical issue in this region. And with this, we want to focus on climate change. Earlier on, we discussed on the COP21 and how it had influenced the climate change policy in Southeast Asia. But how bad is the climate change in Southeast Asia? So, Anbu, what is your overview on the climate situation in Southeast Asia?
Yeah, climate, actually, this is Southeast Asia region is the one of the most vulnerable region to climate change.
Very vulnerable.
Very, very vulnerable. And when compared to that other part of the regions, other part of the world, actually, when I was in ADB and we conducted a study and for the Southeast Asia, and it says by the year 2000, and if we don't take any actions on the climate change, this region may lose about 11% of their GDP. It is, I'm talking about 2100, without any actions. So it is really a huge amount, and if you include the discount rates also. So most of the countries are still agrarian, and also this region is also most dense population sense. So the most affected sectors are the agriculture, water, and health, and possibly the tourism.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't take any actions, and this region will lose more when compared to other parts of the world.
Recently, when we look through all the news in Southeast Asia, from Malaysia to Singapore to all the way to the Philippines, there are issues about floods and raining seasons. We also see a lot of climate change issue like landslide and all that. Do you think that most of this climate change problem is man-made rather than it is the cause of natural climate progression?
Of course, I think nowadays there's a tendency in the world that is everything is related to climate change. Everything you try to relate to the climate change. But the science is not the same, and I think but substantial part of these recent happenings, either the flooding and the drought and these El Nino problems and the onset and offset of the monsoon, I think they have a strong relationship between these increasing the temperature and as well as the changes in the rainfall or the monsoon pattern. So here I think there is a substantial evidence to show that they are man-made. Actually, this is related to the climate change. But at the same time, there are certain factors that is not related to the climate change also. We need to differentiate.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look into the statistics, here with this economic growth going on, and since it is densely populated, and both these economic losses and the human losses that is happening due to this climate-induced events is increasing day by day. More people and more economy and is getting affected. That is the fact. So we need to improve that resilience capacity, and we need to do something that can reduce that emissions, which is contributing for the climate change.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, we need to prepare ourselves for changing the climate. These are the two different things. But we can be careful and we can be innovative. For example, and take this ASEAN region, and where this is the forest. Forest can help in adaptation, can help prevention of these floods. It can retain the floods. At the same time, the forest can also act as a carbon sink. By growing more forest, and you can also, it is a kind of climate change mitigation activity. So these are some of the interventions that is this region can look into, and it should be looking into it.
Mm-hmm. And what about reducing carbon emission? As well know, major ASEAN countries are exporters of coal and other dirty energy.
Yes, Of course, coal is one of the major polluter, and in the sense of carbon as well as the local environmental pollutants. But the fact is, the coal is also a poor man's fuel. The cost of producing, I think we know that is coal is very dirty, and it is the most polluting. On the other hand, you have the renewables like solar, wind, and you do have nuclear, and these are carbon neutral or carbon friendly, whatever you can say. But this is very expensive. Now, for example, per capita energy production, the renewable energy, that is the electricity that is produced from the solar and wind, is nearly 5 times or 6 times more than the coal.
Mm-hmm.
Then how you can justify if it is the poor? And this region is also nearly 17% of the people doesn't have the access to the electricity. So if you want to provide this electricity to people at a cost-effective rate, what is the way to do? Here that is where the role of the public policies comes in.
Mm-hmm.
I think, for example, take the case of Indonesia. It is nearly 50% of their coal resources are there. It is sitting on it. But at the same time, 12% of their population doesn't have the electricity. How you can link these two factors?
So there's a huge disparity in the reality of people's life.
Yes, and another thing is also we can make this coal clean. For example, Japan, they have that within the Tokyo, nearby Tokyo, there is Yokohama city, and they have a coal power plant, but it is very clean. They have this clean coal technology that absorbs all the carbon and it is stored.
So far, any of the ASEAN country adopt this clean coal technology?
Not yet, but they are in the process, and the Indonesia also said that is the whatever that new power plants that will be built will be with this clean coal technology. But again, the cost matters.
Mm-hmm.
The technology is available in the market.
And on the other hand, besides trying to process all this dirty energy to either convert it into a cleaner energy or try to substitute it to renewable energies, besides that, I want to highlight a few key human crisis that has affected climate in Southeast Asia. I think one of the more significant one is the transboundary haze crisis. Do you think the annual occurrence of this haze crisis will only dampen ASEAN's goal in trying to address climate change?
Yes and no. And if you, again, as I tell, that is, if you want to link everything to the climate change, and there is some substance in the haze problem also, you can link into it. But this is a kind of different setup, and here there is there is ASEAN, this agreement on this haze prevention. It is involving 3 countries, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. And it was basically agreed 10 years back, and then it took nearly 8 years to ratify it. But still we have the problem. Why? We have not addressed the root cause of the problem. Root cause of the problem is, I think in the last October, actually I was there in Malaysia. Basically I was in this ASEAN summit meeting, and it was the whole schools were closed there in KL because of this density of this problem, where this is 2,483 milligrams per cubic meter of particulate. This is the maximum. So here, okay, this international global architecture or the international agreements are there, but how it is going, or it is getting addressing the basic problem. The basic problem is the deforestation. Deforestation, and these are the foresters and the small and low-income households that is sitting on the forest for their livelihood.
I see.
And they are converting this land as an economic opportunity, and with the support from the private sector, and so they are conversing their land. Mainly, it is a kind of their desire, and we cannot blame them also.
Mm-hmm.
But here you need to see that is what kind of regulations and is there. I think Indonesia has a perfect regulations, and but how it is getting implemented at the local level.
So it's the question of implementation that's the huge big question.
Example, I think this Jokowi administration he is very 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 particular about it, and I think he is also a forester. He was in the forest business before he became the president. And you know that is the last month he cut short his visit to Washington DC and came back to address this problem. And there are about 244 cases of illegal burning has been registered, and 16 palm oil companies has been penalized, or they have been brought into the court. But it shows some kind of political willingness. But still it has not addressed these basic issues. And then why they are converting these forest lands? You need to see who are the drivers.
Anyway, we'll take a short break. When we return, we'll focus on the future of climate change and a green growth policy.
Monday Morning Matters.
Perspectives
From Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene. You're back with me again, and also Anbu, senior economist from ERIA, to discuss over the climate change in Southeast Asia and how COP21 in Paris has influenced how countries, or in this case, regions, are addressing issues related to climate change. So, Anbu, regarding on green growth, what is ASEAN's plan for it?
ASEAN plan, I think, still, actually, you know, that is ASEC and ASEAN Socio-Cultural Community, and they have a blueprint, particularly until 2015, and this blueprint has different items, about 17 categories on the green growth that include this is climate change mitigation, and then making the cities green. But the basic thing is that is how this process is going to be linked with this ASEAN economic community. Basically, that is the economic driver. Here we found certain gaps, and the ambitions and targets are there, but still there is a lot of gaps are there. And in this regard, basically, one thing the countries can do is what are the developmental priorities? That is how to define the green growth. That itself is a question for the ASEAN because of this diversity of different countries.
When it comes to green growth, when you say diversity of different countries, are you saying that different countries have different economic challenges in addressing green growth? Can you give some of the examples just to paint the picture?
Yes, for example, when we say green growth, actually for my own or our general definition is it is a decoupling the emissions and pollutions from the economic growth. So this region has to grow. Economic growth has to happen. But at the same time, it has to reduce the pollutions and the emissions. How it can be done? That is the green growth. I think here we need more technologies and the finance and the policies and the innovations. This has to happen. But at the same time, if you see this cascade curve, and you know there is this decoupling happens when your per capita income is around $10,000 US dollars. But most of the countries, and except Singapore and Brunei and even Malaysia and Thailand to something, and other countries are much more lower. So here the option for these countries is whether you can wait, and when you see that is your per capita income is going, you are becoming richer. When you are becoming richer, you invest more on the environment, and you make this environment drives growth. But on the other hand, and you can also leapfrog some of the countries. For example, countries in Cambodia and Laos and Vietnam, and they don't need to, though there is a per capita income is less, and they can leapfrog.
Mm-hmm.
The leapfrog means they can make these industries, green industries, for example, green energy, waste management, and the pollution preventions. They can take this as an opportunity and develop a new industries based on that, so that is they can serve the huge market for this environment. So in that way, this country, both the groups can work together and bring green growth as a region as a whole. But for that you need very straight and guiding policies, and also you need a very dynamic private sector, and third you need a kind of regional cooperation architecture. These three are missing at present in ASEAN.
And why do you think it is missing?
Because we are not prepared for it. We are following the conventional pattern. The conventional pattern is grow first, clean later.
Mm-hmm.
This is what Europe has done it. It is what America has done it. It is what Japan did it. But for them, you need to remember that is for them it took nearly 200 years to come to that stage.
So it is a long time.
Yeah, but for ASEAN, the growth is happening very fast. So whatever for them it took 200 years, for ASEAN it took 20 years or 30 years. The speed at which these countries, ASEAN countries, has grown is much higher than those countries. And also those countries would be able to solve their problem in a staged manner. They have the first generation problems, that is about the pollutions, and the second generation problem, that is more about the emissions, and third now it is a climate change. For these countries, for ASEAN countries, it has all the three generations of the problems. So they need to tackle it all simultaneously together. So they lack the capacity also.
They lack the capacity. I'm wondering, is green growth part of the ASEAN Economic Community agenda?
Not at present.
Mm-hmm.
But they can start it. Particularly that is, this ASEAN Economic Community is more about competitiveness. Bringing one single economic block. So that is, the industries, they are equally competitive. So to make it is going to be a challenge, and for that they don't have things. For example, some of the low hanging fruit is this energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is producing more with less of energy. With less energy means you have less pollution. So it is a low hanging fruit. So if they concentrate these green dimensions of energy efficiency, producing more with less resource input, then it will become a green growth agenda.
Mm-hmm. And what about renewable energy?
Yeah, renewable energy is one of these things, and we should appreciate ASEAN's effort. And ASEAN said that is collectively by the year 2015, they will attain 15% of this renewable energy. So they did it and they attained it. And most of the renewable energies are coming from the hydros, that is from the water resources, and then solar, wind and biomass.
So
So these
ASEAN.
countries,
So are you saying that ASEAN is actually doing quite well in trying to incorporate renewable energy as part of its economic agenda?
yes, yes means as a region as a whole, collectively. But if you go to the individual, then this proportion varies. For example, some countries has the less renewables, about 4% or 5%, and the rest of them are coming from the fossil fuels. Some countries, for example, if you go to Laos, I think most of them 80% or 90% is coming from the renewables. That is mostly from the hydros, because they are on the Mekong River, and most of that energy is coming from the water resources. So that is clean and green. So individual level it varies. But still our estimate says that is even this renewables can go up to this 23% by the year 2035. So they have harnessed only 15% of the potential.
I see.
Another 23% they can go it.
And finally, my final question about ASEAN's readiness. Do you think ASEAN is ready yet? If there's a year for ASEAN to be ready, if you can share it?
What for?
If you can share a year where ASEAN would be ready to adopt the pledges in COP21, is it now or is it in the future somewhere?
No, I think most of these INDC targets are targeted for 2030. This is the target that is these countries, ASEAN has committed, ASEAN member states committed. Until 2030 they can do it. But this is not enough to bring down this global temperature to 2 degrees centigrade. But again, this by 2020, after 5 years, they need to go back and report what their actions has been done, and then they will revise and they will progressively improve their targets. So I think if they are in the right track, I think by the year 2050 we can bring the countries, particularly the global, into a safer limit. But that need a lot of political determinations and also policy innovations and further international support.
With that, thank you very much, Ambu.
Yeah, thank you, Arlene. Thank you very much.